Today, we become legends.
In my theme of doing tier lists that are ultimately pretty pointless instead of actual meta tier lists, I mean, I do meta tier lists sometimes, but a lot of the ones I like to do are just sort of more fun ones where you can just explore different aspects of the game, and this one is going to be how hype each god is. So this is mostly based around like how much you would like to see them, how much excitement they bring when you see them, like, you know, in the SPL or Worlds or whatever, and just like the kind of plays they make, whether they're boring or whether they're like extremely hype. I've got negative hype, which is probably going to be an empty tier, or like maybe just one or two gods in here that actually bring like a negative amount of hype to the team. So like if you see them on a team, it actually brings the hype of the team down. Boring is just self-explanatory. Like they're a pretty boring god. They don't really bring too much hype to the table. Meta is like a little bit below average. Like you see this god and you're like, meh, yeah, it's alright. It's not amazing. Average hype is just average characters. Above average, pretty self-explanatory. Very hype is like the kind of top tier of hype gods. Like these are the type of gods you love seeing. They can make so many hype plays. You love seeing them in like SPL and all that kind of stuff. And then the hype machine category is probably going to be reserved for like only a few gods that are just like, anytime you see them, you know there's going to be some kind of insanely hype play in that match. But yeah, let's jump in with Achilles. So Achilles is probably above average, I'd say. Achilles' base kit is like not really very hype. I'll probably put him in average if I was like rating on his base kit, but his ultimate kind of brings him up a little bit. Like having a resettable execute makes for some pretty insane plays. Like if you do hit like a chain execute with this guy, it's incredibly hype. So I think his ultimate brings him up a little bit. Agni is actually one that I think is above average. Mainly just similar to Achilles, actually, just mainly because of his ultimate. Like just like when you bomb over a wall, stun like 3 people, follow it up with 2 more bombs, and they just get deleted. That's incredibly hype. Plus, he can steal objectives pretty easily with the bombs as well, and anyone that can steal objectives pretty well is going to bring a lot of hype to the table. AMC is either average or meh. I feel like AMC is really not that hype of a god. I think I'll go meh. Honestly, he could maybe even be boring. It kind of depends on how much you like the god, but for me, like AMC is just like a bog standard hunter. His ultimate is not exciting at all. The rest of his kit is just like fine. I don't really see any reason that AMC is like a particularly hype god. Apwash, once again, pretty meh, I think. I mean, Apwash has like the kind of burst damage factor where like you can 1-3-2 when someone just absolutely get nuked. So maybe I'll put him in average just off of that. But I feel like Apwash is just kind of like you sit in the back line, kind of throwing your kit on people. Anher is ridiculously hype, dude. Anher is either very or potentially even bordering on hype machine, in my opinion. I love seeing Anher played. Like, the fact that you can, like, you know, you can jump in place and knock people up and outplay them that way. Pillar Impale is literally the most hype thing, like, in a base kit, in my opinion, in the entire game. Like, hitting Pillar Impale feels fucking amazing, and seeing anyone else hit it is also really, like, exciting and hype. His ultimate's pretty hype because, you know, it has a lot of damage potential if you can hit all 5 of the things. You can block people in with pillars. You can block stuff like He-Ball and Mercury up with the pillar, which is also really hype. You know what, talking about this, I'm moving Anher up to hype machine. I love seeing Anher played effectively, and his entire kit basically is super hype. Amaterasu, probably on a similar tier to Achilles and Agni in that her base kit is like fine, but her ultimate is pretty hype, so I think that drags her up a tier. Just like being able to hit like quad stuns and stuff with Amaterasu, like I think in SPL recently, because she's popular in the SPL right now, someone hit like a quad Amaterasu wall, and it's just so hype when you see that, or it may have even been a 5-man. So yeah, I think her ultimate brings her up a tier, much like Achilles and Agni. Anubis, as much as I hate to say it, is actually pretty hype. I don't know if I put him in very hype. I feel like he's kind of here because, once again, his base kit's kind of fine, but his ultimate, like, Anubis ultimate is just something that you love to see. Like, the amount of plays you can do with it, you can burn objectives with it, you can just, like, absolutely melt people. Alquang, in my opinion, Alquang's actually pretty hype. Like, you can do a lot of stuff with him, like when obviously executes are just kind of hype in general, I would say. And then like the amount of burst damage you can do, like when you just jump in and nuke someone with like your 2 and 3 and then just ult them, like that just feels really good to me, both to play and to like watch people play with. Aphrodite is negative hype, dude. I hate Aphrodite. I created this tier just because I knew Aphrodite would be in here. It's possible I'll add some other gods into there, but Aphrodite is complete negative hype. All she does is like play defensive and shut down other people's hype abilities. Like if like an Amaterasu ulting or an Anubis is ulting and it's going to be a super hype moment and Aphro just presses 4, it just negates all of that. And she doesn't really have particularly flashy animation. She's a healer, which is, in my opinion, brings you down the tier just from being a healer. And it feels like she only really has 2 abilities outside of her ultimate, of course, because the kiss isn't really an ability. She's super boring and also like has the negative hype factor where she like takes away from the hype of other gods that are on the enemy team. So yeah, I think she belongs here. Apollo's probably meh. Like, his ultimate can bring some fairly high plays, and the mez is pretty cool to watch. Like, you know, just instant mezzing people. But the rest of his kit is just, like, very, very bog standard for ADCs. You could maybe argue he should be an average, but I think he's about on the level of AMC, in my opinion. Arachne is boring, dude. This might be personal bias, but I feel like all Arachne does is just, like, vomit her 1, 2, and 3 on someone, and if they died, then that's great. If they didn't die, she just ults and gets away. Like, it feels like Arachne's just, like, you know exactly what Arachne's going to do. There's never anything unexpected. And the way she kills people isn't hype at all. She just kind of walks at them and auto-attacks them to death. That's not very fun. Ares? So Ares' ultimate alone is, like, one of the more hype abilities that will bring up the tier list, but I also like his chains and, like, chains flames combos. I don't think I'll put him in very hype, but I think above average is pretty good for Ares. Artemis, the boar is pretty cool. Traps are also pretty cool. Like, being able to trap off of, like, your teammates' CCs and stuff like that. It's just the 2 and the 3 are a bit boring, so I think I'll leave her in above average instead of very hype, because the trap and the ult are very hype, but the rest of her kit are just kind of okay. Artio is boring. I almost want to put her in negative hype because she has, like, the whole cripple just shuts down a lot of people's interesting plays, which I think is definitely a negative to her, but I mean, she's okay. Like, actually, no, I'm going to move her down. She has no hype about her, really. Like, she has no ultimate, of course, so, like, she doesn't have that flashy big ultimate play that a lot of other gods can have. And her abilities are just bog standard and pretty boring. Like, they don't really do anything flashy, they just do a little bit each because she's a stance switcher. It just feels like, because of the cripple, like, her kit itself isn't very hype, and then also the cripple is, like, negative hype, so I'm going to leave it down here. Athena is very hype, in my opinion. Like, one, her ultimate can bring a lot of interesting plays, like being able to ult over to team fights and start fights that way, but mainly just the taunt. Like, Athena taunt is probably one of the most, if not the most, like, hype support initiation abilities. Maybe tied with a few others. And just being able to taunt and, like, have it followed up by one of your big mage ultimates or whatever, that's insanely hype, so she has to be up here for me. Awilix, very hype as well. Awilix ultimate, like, threeing people over a wall and, like, pulling them over the wall and stuff like that. Just Awilix ult in general. Feather Step, being able to, like, dodge certain abilities with the immunity frames is insanely fun. And just in general, Awilix is, like, one of the most hype gods in the game for me. Baba Yaga, this might be influenced by her release being so trash, but I'm going to put her in there. I feel like her ultimate's so slow and not that flashy, it doesn't really bring too much. And then, I don't know, maybe I'll put her in average, because, like, some of the RNG elements, like, while I'm not a big fan of the RNG myself, it does bring hype, I'll admit that. Like, if Baba Yaga gets, like, the exact right thing on her one, like, she gets the right shape and a silence to, like, cancel someone's ability or something like that, that's pretty hype, so I'll put her in average. Actually, after everything I've just said about her, I think I'm letting my personal bias affect this too much. I'm going to move her up to above average. Just the fact that she has, like, the RNG in her kit is pretty exciting. Bacchus, above average. He has a similar thing to Athena, where, like, Bacchus belly flop as an initiation is, like, incredibly fun and very hyped to watch. The ultimate can nuke people, which is also pretty funny, but the rest of his kit's okay. Not amazing. Bakasura, probably average. There's a lot of things about Bakasura that I don't like, mainly just the fact that he holds left click and walks at people, but, like, a Bakasura, like, blinking or jumping into a fight and ulting, like, a bunch of people and just nuking them is pretty hype and pretty fun, so I think I'll leave him in average for now. Baron... Baron's an interesting one, because he does have, like, anti-hype in a way, in that he kind of, like, shuts down a lot of the stuff people want to do, but him in itself is, like, a reasonably hype god, so I think I'll put him in average. I think his negative hype effects kind of cancel out a lot of the hype stuff about his kit, so I think average is what it should be. Bastet, this might be influenced by the fact that she's terrible and I hate the rework, but I think I'm going to put her in boring. Like, all Bastet does is jump in and, like, summon cats. I mean, the ultimate's kind of cool in that, you know, it kind of buffs up your abilities and you kind of hype for, like, a little bit, but I don't know. Bastet just seems really boring to me. Her abilities are, like, so basic that I just don't think she's that hype. Bellona, probably average. Her ult is pretty cool, but not anything amazing, but, like, amazingly special in terms of being hype. She could do a lot of interesting plays with, like, block stacks, you know, like diving hunters and just stacking up block stacks, and, like, low health fights like that where she's just abusing block stacks can be pretty hype. But overall, she's just pretty average. Cabrakan is above average, I'd say. Like, his whole, like, one and running at people and, like, stunning them is pretty hype, and then obviously the ultimate, when it goes off and has an impact on, like, you know, Hebo or whatever, that's really fun to watch. Karma is meh. Like, he just kind of vomits his abilities on people. He has tons of healing, which is, like, kind of boring to watch. Like, you just poke him out and then he heals straight back up. But the ultimate is pretty fun on camera, I guess. Like, the fact that you can tower dive with it. Cerberus, average, I'd say. His ultimate brings him up a little bit. The rest of his kit is relatively boring, but his ultimate is pretty cool. Cerberus, so similar to Ares, Cerberus ultimate is, like, one of the more hype abilities in the game, just because you can, like, group them up for mage ultimates and things like that. But the rest of Cerb's kit, I mean, the one is kind of cool, I guess, but the rest of his kit isn't that exciting. Chang'e, I find this god incredibly boring, man. It's just like you 1 and you 2, and then you 1 and you 2, and then you 1 and you 2. It just feels like that's all he does, really, and then he heals up in between waves, and... I mean, the ult is okay, I guess, but compared to a lot of other ultimates, it's not even that hype. It's just like a knock-up and a silence. It's... I don't know, I just find Chang'e very boring. Chang'e, very boring as well. I don't think she's quite in the negative hype category because she doesn't really, like, unhype other gods, but her herself is just very boring. Like, 1, she's a healer, 2, she can stay in lane forever because she has the rabbit to get her items, and 3, all she does is just, like, 1U and 1U and 1U and 1U. I don't know, her ultimate is pretty cool, though. Maybe I should move her up to here just by virtue of her ultimate. Like, she gets dragged down by the rest of her kit, but her ult is pretty hype if you can hit, like, a multi-man stun with that. Like, if you hit 3 or 4 people and stun someone for 4 seconds, that is pretty hype. So, I think meh as well. I'll leave her for now. Chernobog, pretty boring. I think meh. Once again, kind of like Chang'e, his ultimate can lead to some pretty hype plays, like early rotation, stuff like that, which can be pretty exciting, but the rest of his kit is just meh. I mean, the dash into the wall is kind of cool, though. It kind of borders on the territory of negative hype with the dashing into the wall, but it's just like a way to dodge abilities. It's kind of similar to Awilix too. I might move him up to average, actually. Chiron, so one of his abilities being literally auto-targeted is the most boring shit ever. But, I mean, his ultimate's pretty cool, the fact that you can revive with it. I just feel like Chiron's not that exciting to watch, dude. I think I'm going to put him in there. Kronos, pretty average. Sometimes he can get off big ultimates that, like, completely turn the fight, but other than that, I mean, sniping people with the 1 is pretty cool, but yeah, pretty average, all things considered. Cthulhu, probably above average. Mainly just down to his ultimate. Like, when you ult in a team fight and you're just, like, going ham, like, destroying people, that is pretty hype to watch, even if you know a little bit overpowered. Cuchulainn, I feel like Cuchulainn's very hype, dude. I like watching Cuchulainn in solo. Like, the whole rage mechanic thing, you know, playing around that. Once he goes rage, like, you have a lot of kill potential in lane, you can kind of pressure pretty hard, and then his teamfight potential is actually pretty good too, because 1, he can transform in teamfights, and 2, his ultimate is also pretty high when you, like, go and you spin that massive spear and knock everyone up. It's pretty cool. Cupid's pretty hype. I'd probably say above average. Mostly just down to his ultimate, like, that huge impact the ultimate can have, like, just locking people down for so long. That's, like, a big deal. The rest of Cupid's kit is actually pretty boring, but the ultimate itself just brings him up here, I think. Daji, same thing. Her ultimate is very exciting, but the rest of her kit is kind of just okay. Okay, this video's looking like it's getting a little bit long, so I'm going to go a little quicker with some of these. Discordia is pretty hype. Like, the 2 is very cool for, you know, if you hit the double madness on the 2 and they start attacking each other, that's really, really exciting to watch. Erlang, I don't know whether I have to put him in average or above average. Because personally, I'm biased towards Erlang because I really like him and I love, like, the turtle cancel, just, like, nuking people and stuff, but I think he's probably pretty average. Fafnir is probably above average. I think he's close to being very hype as Fafnir, just because, like, the ultimate is really hype to watch. And it's really exciting when he, like, ults and then dives in, you know, for the double stun, and the whole AoE coerce thing is pretty exciting. Fenrir's ult is, like, I don't know. Like, you could argue Fenrir's ult is pretty hype, but you could also argue it's just, like, the worst, because all he does is kind of, like, pull people in a tower and into his team and stuff. I think I'll put him in average. You can kind of make an argument for Fenrir being really hype, and also make an argument for Fenrir being boring at the same time, which is weird, so I think I'll just put him in average. Freya, so aside from the fact that she's very broken and, like, does so much damage, she's not really that hype, honestly. Ganesha, really cool, actually. I think above average, just mainly down to his ultimate. Like, being able to drop that, like, on an objective or whatever, or in a big team fight and just lock people in, that's really hype in my opinion. Geb. So, Geb has that, like, negative hype aspect, where, like, Geb Shield kind of shuts down a lot of the other hype abilities that people want to go for, which isn't great, but then Geb Shield also has the same thing but opposite. Like, when you save a teammate with Geb Shield, that's incredibly hype. It's just sort of like, so it probably averages out, I would say. It's like, Geb Shield is like a neutral, because it's really hype when you save teammates with it, but it's also really anti-hype for the enemy team. And then Gebel is pretty cool, so I think I'll put Geb in above average. Guan, I don't know, Guan to me is like really boring. It feels like all he does is just like channel the 3 and then that's kind of it. And then he like heals out of combat, I guess. Like the ult is okay, but not amazing really. The only thing that's exciting about the ult is that you can cancel it early and catch people off guard. I think I'll put him in meh. Hachi to me feels like an ADC that has a lot of kind of exciting things you can do with him. Like being able to like aggressive dash and stun people, like being able to horse into fights and things like that. I think above average is fine for him. Hades, so as much as I hate Hades, he is kind of hype when you see him played, like mainly just for the fact that he can like heal so much and like burst people really hard. And then Hades ult itself, like when it actually works and does go off, is pretty hype. Hebo, very hype. Hebo's like verging on being hype machine, just because like the amount of burst damage he brings to fights and like the multi-kills he can get. Like whenever you see a Hebo like 3 and ult someone, it's just immediately hype because that person's probably just insta-dead. But Hebo himself is like very high risk, high reward because like he has pretty low mobility and you can get dived by a lot of assassins and warriors. But then like, you know, he gets rewarded for that by being insanely high damage. So I think very hype is fine for him. Hell, I don't know, Hell to me is like either negative hype or boring. Just like healers to me are like instantly not hype because like they just make poke pointless and they just heal their team up and like it's not fun to just watch a Hell heal her team up from 20% health. It's just not. But I don't think I put her in negative hype. She doesn't deserve the level of like Afro and RTO in my opinion. Heim, probably above average. Heim is like interesting because like the ult and the crystals are really high, but the rest of his kit is kind of like boring. Hera's an interesting one. Because like the whole pet mechanic with Argus is pretty exciting. I think I'll put her in average. Hercules, very hype. Just hitting a Hercules combo and insta-killing someone because of it. It's frustrating to play against, but it's incredibly fun to watch. Same thing with him like zooming around while using mitigate wounds and stuff and like bouldering people, like bouncing off walls. I don't know, dude. Maybe Hercules is hype machine. I feel like it's just really exciting to watch a good Hercules play. Like, if you haven't watched PBM in the SPL, play Hercules support and just run the entire map early game, you should watch it because I think Hercules deserves hype machine. Horus, I'd say very hype. Horus is like, he has a lot of early damage and kill potential in like duo lane, which is already pretty hype, and then like the ult itself is just like so exciting to watch people like theorycraft around and play with. Like just being able to TP your whole team, like and cut the enemy off and like start a fight. That's exciting for me. Hu Yi, I think just Hu Yi on the virtue of triple bounce alone maybe should be hype machine. But like the rest of his kit isn't that hype. Like the Sunbreaker is kind of cool. The dash has like some outplay potential. But obviously the mark is very boring. And I think it has to be hype machine, right? Like you can't watch a Hu Yi triple bounce someone and say that's not hype. You just can't. I think it has to be up here just by virtue of that ability alone. Hunbat's base kit is like the most boring shit ever, dude, but the ultimate is like very hype, so I think above average is fine. Isis is pretty boring, honestly. I mean, like max range spirit balls are pretty cool, but other than that, she's just like kind of an early game dominator, good at objectives, but like her ult in team fights, it can be hype, but oftentimes it just doesn't really do all that much. I think average is fine. Izanami is pretty boring, honestly. The only thing that's exciting about Izanami is like the fact that you can like, her ult is quite hard to hit, and if you land it perfectly, you can like steal objectives with it and like silence people. It's pretty cool. Giannis is very hype for me. Like obviously playing against Giannis is like arguably anti-hype, but like the whole portal mechanics and how speedy he is, and like if you've ever seen a Giannis just ult through a wall and immediately and insta-kill someone, that is just like one of the most hype things in the game for me. And also like the big rotations, like you can backdoor with Giannis as well. Like I've seen teams like Giannis ult into the enemy like Titan room and just end off of it. That's really hype. And like just Giannis in general, like being able to move his whole team around the map can create a lot of hype players. Jingwei is just the worst, dude. Like I'm never excited to see Jingwei. I feel like she's so bog standard, so safe, so like not really generic necessarily, but it's mainly just the fact that she's so safe. It's like anytime you feel like Jingwei might die, no, she just dashes away or ults away, and like if she gets poked out of lane and might be forced into like a low health engagement, which could be pretty hype to watch with the other ADC, no, she just backs and gets back into lane for free. So I feel like Jingwei is like boring, verging on negative hype, honestly, because of how incredibly safe she is, and like if she doesn't want to fight the enemy ADC, she just won't fight the enemy ADC, so it's like, she just creates a boring lane in my opinion. Yom's like, fine. I mean, his ult is pretty cool, I guess. It's not really that hype to watch though. I feel like you see a Yom ult and you're just like, yeah, he's going to disrupt the backline. You don't really feel like there's going to be anything exciting about that. Kali, so the way Kali kills people is incredibly boring, but the fact that she can like 1v5 teams and like her ability to resist death and stuff just feels pretty hype to me. I don't know. I feel like no other god can really like 1v5 teams in the way Kali can, which is just, it's obviously hype to see that. I think she deserves to be up here, honestly. Khepri, I think, goes in the same tier as Geb for very similar reasons. Like, he does have like anti-hype factors with his ultimate, but on the flip side, ulting your teammate and getting them like out of the fight when they're about to die is also very hype. So King Arthur, I think before the Glad Shield change, I would have had him in very hype. Like, yeah, everyone's gonna like comment down below saying, oh, Arthur just face rolls people, it's boring, but I feel like watching an Arthur, like an actually decent Arthur player, mind you, not one that just face rolls, like 1v5 people and like get out, like that's just hype to me. Like, obviously it's frustrating to play against, I'm not saying it should work like that, but when it did work like that, it was pretty hype in my opinion. But I think since the change to Glad Shield, he's become a bit more boring and generic. Like, he was kind of defined by like his hilarious abuse of that item, which was pretty hype in my opinion, but now he just kind of builds Gaia or Breastplate or something, and it's a bit more boring. He just kind of plays more like a generic warrior now, but with more abilities. So yeah, I think I'll just put him in above average. Kukulkan, he's verging on very hype in my opinion, just simply because of his ultimate. Like, hitting a big Kukulkan ultimate is one of the most exciting things that you can see in a game. But I think the rest of his kit is like pretty boring, so I'll put him down here. Kumba is negative hype, dude. I hate to say it, but Kumba is not only boring in the way that his base kit works, but also just like complete anti-hype, because like anyone who's trying to do anything just gets mez for 3.5 seconds, and then what do you do? I mean, the ult can like kind of be pretty cool if like you're setting up for stuff, but I don't think it makes up for the fact that his entire kit is boring and he's just like anti-hype. Kuzumbo to me is like actually a pretty hype character now. I actually love seeing Kuzumbos be played well. Like, not only do you have like the shield and thorns thing, which can be pretty exciting, like you can kill mages that were like dropping their ults on you, or you can just like dive their backline, and if the enemy hunter doesn't realize you've just popped thorns and thorns and your 2, you can just like do 800 damage to them before they even realize. And just like the whole dashing through the wave is pretty high, dashing into towers, his ultimate itself, like setting up for people. I feel like Kuzumbo is just, I love seeing Kuzumbo played, honestly. Loki, so Loki's a weird one because Loki in like laning phase and early game is the most boring god in the entire game. But once he does get to teamfight stages, if he actually plays for the teamfights and doesn't split push, he can be like a little bit hype. Like getting into their backline and just nuking their carry. So I think I'll put him up 1 tier. I think if it was just based on like Loki's laning phase or his split push potential, he'd definitely be boring. But I feel like that little bit of hype that he can bring in a team fight where like he gets into the backline and nukes the really important enemy carry, that's actually pretty hype. So I think I'll bring him up 1 tier just for that. Medusa's like meh. Her ultimate is pretty okay. I mean, the thing is, you often don't really hit Medusa ultimate. I mean, maybe on console you get hit by it more, but on PC it feels like Medusa ultimate never really lands unless you like ult from around a corner and catch someone out with it. I don't know, maybe she's average. Yeah, I feel like Medusa's not like boring particularly, she's just average. Mercury, so like big Mercury crits and like running through team fights, just killing people with Bloodforge is pretty hype, and also his ultimate. Like he ganks very differently to a lot of other junglers. Like you can gank from up your own lane, which in itself is pretty hype and very different and exciting. I think above average is a pretty good spot for Mercury. Merlin is like, I don't know, it feels like Merlin's not that exciting to watch. He just like kind of vomits abilities. None of his abilities in themselves are that exciting or hype. Partly because he's just a stance switcher and it's like, you know, he doesn't really have an ultimate. But I don't know. Merlin's just not that exciting for me. Maybe even down here. It just feels like all of his abilities are just boring. Mulan is fine. There's nothing too exciting about Mulan, she just kind of does her stuff. Neith, also fine. Her ultimate can bring some hype plays when you use it correctly to like pick people off and use it for like follow-up ganks or like initiations when your jungler's going to gank a lane. stuff like that. But the rest of Neith's base kit is very boring. Nemesis, probably above average. I feel like when you nemult someone and like, you know, your entire team like drops onto them and just nukes them, like that's their tank or their frontline or whatever, that's pretty exciting. And crit nem, which is kind of the meta right now, is also way more exciting than standard ability based nem, because she can burst people like super hard. And the shield itself is also pretty cool. Neja is fine. Like his ultimate can bring like some cool setup for your mages and like low health engagements and stuff, but he's fine. Nike is hella boring, dude. I feel like all Nike does is just like you jump on people and then like if you're gonna get low you ult, and the two kind of like block stuff. I don't know. Nike just feels super boring to me. So Nox does bring anti-hype in my opinion, but just when Nox hits a 2-1 combo, that's just exciting to me. So I think I'll probably put her in average, because like some aspects of her kit are like either boring or like negative hype, but also like just hitting the 2-1 combo just feels amazing. And also like the hiding inside allies can also bring some pretty hype, like low health plays and stuff like that. So I think average is fine. Nuwa to me is very boring. I don't know whether I should put her in meh or boring, but like her ultimate is like the least hype thing in the entire game, because it's literally just auto targeted. Odin's like boring as hell, dude. I feel like since they reworked Odin, all he does is just like 3 you and stun you and then shield and then jump away, and then his shield's back up by that time and he shields again, and then you eventually get through that shield and then his jumps back up and he jumps away. It feels like Odin just plays way too defensive now, I feel. I don't know, the rework I feel like made him less hype in my opinion, because like Bird Bomb isn't used as Bird Bomb anymore as much. It's used as like an actual separate ability now, so you use it as the shield and the jump, not just Bird Bomb, which is a lot less hype in my opinion. So Ola Run ult in itself is like a super hype ability. The rest of his kit is just okay, but I think he probably fits in like a similar category to stuff like Achilles, Agni, Amaterasu. Like his base kit is just fine, but his ultimate is very hype. Osiris is just like the most boring shit ever, dude. Like you never want to lane against Osiris. All he does is just like win lane for free, and then like I guess he does pretty well in team fights, but he's just like a mitigation machine that's very hard to kill and just runs around slowing people. It just feels kind of boring to me. Pele is really cool. I don't think she deserves to be up here. I think above average is fine for her. It feels like Pele's ultimate, the animation just feels super hype to me, like where she like spins around and then like dashes in. Just seems really cool. Just the way Pele engages fights and like the point blank ulting people with Pele is also pretty cool. Persephone. So you'll all know if you've watched my channel at any point that I hate this god. But I don't know. It feels like she has some negative hype because of like the ultimate is so just unfun to be on the receiving end of. The plants are pretty boring. The jump is just a jump. I think I'll put her in meh though, just because like the ultimate does have, it's kind of like a Geb Shield style thing where like it's really awful to be on the receiving end of, but it's pretty exciting to hit yourself and like to see used. Poseidon is probably above average. I think he's close to being very hype just because like Release the Kraken is just like an iconic ability in the game and will always be like one of the most hype ways to win a team fight. Like when you're in the jungle and like you're around a wall and you just like drop the 3 and the enemy's just like, oh fuck, we're about to get Kraken, and like you hit a 3-man Kraken or whatever. That's just like iconic Smite in my opinion. Ra. So Ra's very similar to Poseidon, but his ultimate is more hype because like you can do the insane long range plays and it's a lot harder to hit than the Kraken is. And it's also up more often, so you get more chances to make hype plays with it. Ra is a healer, which is like, yeah, but he's sort of like a secondary purpose healer. He's not like Hell or Aphro, where like his main job is to heal the team. Like he can heal very effectively, but he's also just an absolute hype machine with his ultimate. Like his ultimate is almost on the level of Triple Bounce, where like it would put him in hype machine on its own, but it's not quite there in my opinion. Raijin to me just feels pretty boring. I mean, like his ultimate has like multiple uses, which kind of can make for some interesting plays, but I don't know. He seems pretty boring to me. Rama's probably up here. Like he absolutely shreds, and just his ultimate again is kind of like Ra. Like if you've ever seen any decent ADC player in the SPL like use Rama snipes and get a kill with it, like the casters pop off, and like it's just so exciting to watch. Rat is fine. Like there's nothing too exciting about Rat, but he's not particularly boring either, I wouldn't say. Same thing with Raven actually. Raven's just pretty average as well. Scylla Has to be very hype, right? Like, so just the fact that she can reset and just like pentakill entire teams. I don't know, maybe Scylla's hype machine, dude. Maybe Scylla's hype machine. It just feels like the fact that you can just like kill an entire team with her ultimate in itself is like incredibly hype, and then also the rest of her kit is like pretty exciting. Like the 1-2 combo can also one-shot people, and like if they're grouped up, they can just get decimated by this. And it feels like Scylla can just wipe a whole team pretty much on her own, especially with setup CC. So I think she deserves hype machine, honestly. Serqet, she's fine. I don't think there's anything particularly exciting. Then again, maybe she should be above average just based on the fact that she can do the double madness into Deathbane. That's like very skill testing. Not many people can hit that consistently. And when people do hit it, it's very exciting. So I think that bumps her up one tier. Set is fine. I don't think Set's particularly exciting, but he's not a boring character by any means. Skadi, meh. She's not that fun, in my opinion. She's pretty frustrating. And the fact that like her pet does a lot of the work is pretty anti-hype. But like when she ults and sends Calder in, it can be pretty cool. So I don't think she deserves to be unboring. Now Sobek is a very interesting one because he has some of the most boring abilities in the entire game and the most boring laning phase, especially in solo. But then once you get to team fights with Sobek, like the pluck alone just feels like it should bring him up tiers. I think I'm going to put him in average just because like some aspects of his kit make me want to put him in boring and the pluck makes me want to put him in hype machine. So it's kind of like he's going to be somewhere in the middle, I feel like. Sol's fine. Like her ultimate is pretty cool to use. But other than that, she's not really that exciting. Wukong is pretty boring in my opinion. He doesn't really do all that much. Like the one thing that's exciting about Wukong is that he can always escape a situation. So sometimes like he'll be diving in 1v4 and then he can somehow still get out. That's pretty exciting. But other than that, he's just like a very bog standard warrior. Susanoo is fine. Probably average. To me, Susanoo is like, he can do some pretty cool things with like AA cancelling and stuff, but then like he's also not particularly exciting. Maybe above average. I think above average probably. Sylvanas, probably up here. His ultimate is pretty cool. But the main reason he's up here is because of the 3. Like, hype Sylvanas pulls. Like, that's one of the coolest things you can do as support. Terra is average. I don't really see any reason to put Terra anywhere else. Her ultimate feels a little boring because it's just sort of like, you know, you press a button and you get extra stats. It doesn't really seem that hype. But, like, she can do some pretty cool initiations with, like, the 1-3 combo. She can stun people and block people with the 2. That's pretty cool. Thana to me is like above average just because like he's a big snowball character and seeing someone like snowball at the early game is actually pretty hype to watch. It's not great to be on the receiving end of, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty hype to just like watch a Thanatos run the early game and be one-shotting people with death size. Plus executes bring up the hype factor of a god just by default in my opinion. Mori is... Oh, should I put Mori in hype machine? I don't know, dude. I don't think she's quite on the level of these. I feel like she'd be like a border character. Because, like, obviously Morrigan's ultimate can be almost anything. And that in itself is really hype. Like, seeing a really good Morrigan player utilize 3 or 4 different transforms throughout the course of the game for, like, the situation is just super exciting to watch. And, like, you never really know what she's going to do. Like, the really good Mori players have, like, you know, a couple of transforms in their back pocket that they don't necessarily use all the time. But when they do use them, it's like, oh, fuck, he's doing that? And like you expect a completely different thing, and it just turns out that she transforms into like a completely thing that no one was expecting, and just does like some insanely high play with it. I don't know if she deserves to be in like the level of these characters in my opinion. Thor is pretty cool. I don't think very hype. I don't know. To me, Thor probably is actually. He's like a lower end of this tier, but like double tap is super exciting. His whole like full ult combo one-shotting people is pretty hype to watch. He can do a lot of interesting things with like his semi-global presence. Yeah, to me, I think Thor is like one of the better hype characters. Thoth has Thoth snipes, but the rest of his kit is kind of like meh. It's just like, I'm gonna throw my shit over a wall and poke you with it. So he's not on the level of Ra in my opinion, but similar to Poseidon, he's just carried by the fact that his ultimate is really hyped to see. Tia is very boring, dude. Actually, I'll put him up one tier just because of Fearless displacement. Like, it can be pretty exciting to like blink Fearless someone into your team or just like Fearless people into towers, stuff like that. That's like one hype thing about his kit, but like the fact that he has so much built-in sustain makes the laning phase in solo really boring. He was a little more exciting actually when the movement speed builds were popular on him, because like being slippery and just like running around the back line like that can create some hype plays, but they nerfed that, and I feel like Tier doesn't really build like that anymore, and it's not as hype. Ula is either very hype or is potentially hype machine in my opinion. Ula's just a super exciting character to see, and he's a stand switcher as well, which is like, he doesn't have a big flashy ultimate, but just the fact that like one axe can mean someone is dead is like really exciting to watch, because like you're always on edge. Like if you see Ula throw an axe, you're like, oh fuck, that person might just be dead. And like if you do hit the full combo off of that and kill someone, it's just like so exciting to watch. I feel like Ula does deserve to be hype machine actually. Ula's also like pretty APM heavy. Like a lot of times you want to be like activating your buffs and switching stances a lot, and if you haven't watched Solo watch roleplay Ula, dude, you have to watch it. He has a YouTube channel, or like, you can catch him on his streams. He's played Ula solo a couple of times, and his Ula APM is ridiculous, dude. Like, you just look at it and you're like, how is he pressing this many buttons so fast? Because like he's swapping stances like repeatedly, making sure he keeps his buffs up, and just like, it's insane, dude. So I think Ula deserves to be in this category. Vamana, so like Game Hunter's pentakill at the launch tournament makes me want to put this guy higher than I probably should. Because like his base kit is pretty boring, but like Vamana ult is like one of the coolest things. I feel like I kind of just defined him as above average, because like he's got a fairly boring base kit but an exciting ultimate. That's what I'd put a lot of the characters that are like that in this tier, so I think I'll put him here. Vulcan is either very hype or potential hype machine. Like Vulcan ult is probably the single most exciting mage ult in the game. Like you could argue Scylla's is more exciting because it can like reset, but a single use of Scylla ultimate isn't as exciting as like a big sweaty max range Vulcan ult. You can steal objectives with it, and like Meatball is also very exciting. Like Meatball into backfire combos. The only thing that's not that exciting is his turret, but I feel like anytime I see a good Vulcan play, I just love watching it. I feel like I might want to put him in hype machine. Xbalanque is pretty boring in my opinion. I mean, his ultimate used to have a little bit more utility, which was kind of exciting, but like his base kit is just meh. Like you have the bowlers, which don't really do anything. They're not very flashy. They're just like a little extra bonus. The 2 and the 3 are just like... This is a bit off topic, but I'd like to see Xbalanque minorly reworked, in my opinion. His base kit just feels so boring and not that impactful. I'd like to see maybe his 2 changed or something. I think I'll put him in there. I don't think he deserves to be down here with like these characters that are literally like the most boring crap ever, like Osiris and Chang'e and stuff, but yeah, I think I'll put him in there. Jing brings the hype for the ultimate, but once again, I feel like his base kit isn't really that exciting, so I think above average. Yamoja, I think Yamoja is pretty hype actually. Like a good Yamoja player. The ultimate is like super hype. Being able to block people off. Like if you use the ultimate effectively and block off like a team and just force a team fight on your terms, that's really exciting. And then just the fact that she doesn't use mana, it feels like, you know, she can kind of like spam her base kit out and use them as she wants instead of being limited to cooldowns, and that's pretty hype to watch. Yumiya, also very hype. Like Yumiya wall, like a good Yumiya player abusing Yumiya wall is like one of the most hype things you can see. The freeze is like similar to Athena taunt, like a big AoE CC that can just like bring a lot of hype to the table. And then his ultimate, like when it does go off, can be pretty cool as well. Zeus. So I feel like being on the receiving end of a fed Zeus is like the worst thing in existence, but being that Zeus or watching that Zeus from like a third party perspective when you're not in that game is actually pretty fun to watch. And finally, Zhong Kui, very boring base kit, very cool ultimate, probably deserves to be an above average. But yeah, that's the tier list. I'm sure some of you disagree. I mean, there's some picks that I think are just universally accepted, like Aphrodite and Kumba being down here, probably RTO as well. I don't think you can really argue that Huyi, Scylla, and her shouldn't be in hype machine, but like, you know, maybe you think like Hercules deserves to be bumped down a couple of tiers or whatever. So let me know your thoughts down below on this, and I'll catch you guys later. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.